Welcome this afternoon to El Studio. Here we have two wonderful friends, both brothers, who are very much involved into the digital art. So they're going to tell us today what is behind the NFTs, what is behind these new digital forms of art that, is going to revolutionize probably the market, no?
Yes.
Pablo and David Rodríguez-Fraile are both brothers. One is in the financial realm of this, and Pablo is a collector and also the person who make all the investigation. Correct, Pablo, about this?
That is around.
Fine. So tell me, how did you first got involved with all of this?
Well, I always had a connection with art and architecture while growing up through the family, and I'm also married to a beautiful and wonderful lady that is a designer and architect. So art has always been a big part of my life. It is true, however, that my landing in this space really happened as a result of what I do traditionally as well. With that, I have been around the digital space, the blockchain sector for a long time. When I realized that this technology would allow for better transferability, for better proof of ownership, for just a more efficient manner of transacting with digital art, I realized that this would inevitably grow over time. So having said that, I actually started this as a passion project where I just wanted to be part of this historical, artistical revolution that was happening, and just to actually represent digitally the things that I thought were beautiful and aesthetically pleasing and pushing forward. So I really started the career in that regard. I started speaking with all the creators and all the participants in the ecosystem, and I realized that this technology was at the verge of being known by everybody, and that it will make an explosion of creativity in the new form of digital creators and artists that had not had the chance to trade or to monetize their works before.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit more about NFTs, non-fungible token. What does that mean, and how it's based? What is the technology behind it? Because I think our public would probably love to hear, a little bit more of how it's made. No?
Certainly, I'll try not to get too technical, but conceptually, it is just the technology that we use so that we can make sure that an asset, in this case a digital asset, we can prove both the provenance, the history, and any transaction or any interaction with that asset over time. These tokens, these non-fungible tokens, use what is called the blockchain technology, which is just a general way where we can keep track of movements in an open, immutable ledger where everybody can have access and nothing can be changed once it has happened. So it's fundamentally...
For all of you who, like me, are very new on this, I like to tell you that blockchain is just a platform that, instead of being hosted in one server, is hosted in many servers. What means is whatever document or piece of art you're putting into this software will have, for example, a provenance and the certificates and everything divided into many servers, which make it very hard for anyone to hack, for a hacker to intervene. So it gives you the assurance that that document is real and is there in your hands forever. Correct?
That is correct.
Wonderful. Tell me a little bit more about what you did, that you just bought a piece of art that was from Beeple.
Yes.
And you bought it in an auction, and it was... Tell me a little bit about that story.
Certainly. So I've been involved again in this space for some time, and when Beeple started joining the space, he was very smart, and he started discussing with all the prominent participants of the ecosystem. So I realized during that time that he had all the virtues that any symbol, any leader could have, and I realized that he was the best of the best at his particular practice. Therefore, I decided that these were a very, very important artist and creator, and that I wanted to support long term. So I did purchase in two pieces, or the first two pieces of this first drop in the NFT space, and it was an auction against against the person actually that ultimately won the Christie's auction just a few days ago. And yeah, it was a process where, you know, a regular auction, and I purchased it for $66,000, and I sold it 4 months later for $6.6 million.
Good investment. Tell me about that. Is that a good investment?
It is.
And because he's in the financial area, how do you think, I mean, people could be investing in this technology?
I think there's two ways. The first way is to buy individual pieces of art, like Pablo did.
Is that easy? How do you do that?
It's very easy to purchase. It's at this point hard to, you know, first of all, that kind of return on investment is very difficult to replicate in this world or in any other world at this point, because obviously the world is now bigger, and there's a reason why it's hard to make that, you know, that kind of multiples on your initial investment. But what I'd say is the first thing you can do is you can try to find an artist that's maybe less discovered or you know, is going to be up and coming, purchase some of his art, and then in the near or mid or long term, potentially you know, sell at a later time when that artist is more well known.
But if I want to buy a digital piece, you know, where do I go? How do I do to get a piece of art?
You open an account at niftygateway.com or at makersplace.com. You put in your email.
Let's say the word again. One is Maker's Place, and the other one?
Niftygateway.com.
Nifty Gateway. So you have two places there that you can go and buy.
It's very easy to get yourself verified. You put your email, you verify that, and then you put a credit card or an Ethereum wallet or something to be able to transact. And then you have to scroll. You scroll in the primary market of drops, or you scroll in the secondary market of things that had already been sold that other users are maybe selling. And the second way to invest in the ecosystem is to actually invest in the growth of the ecosystem itself. And that is usually through an investment in a platform like Nifty Gateway or Maker's Place, or the platform that Pablo and some of his partners are working on, or to invest in companies that help create the curation process, or that help create the platform / marketplace process, or anything that has to do with the space. I think what Pablo did is very difficult to do, and continuing to do so requires that you know the artist very well, that you have a very good understanding of people's careers. It's very time consuming. I think the institutional investors will probably gravitate a little bit more towards investing in the actual ecosystem, marketplaces, or anything that has to do with the process of the growth of the NFT world. And I think individual collectors will gravitate more towards individual pieces of art, because also it's more fun. No, I mean, you can see the art, you have it, you trade it, it's different. No,
but maybe also difficult, because thousands of people, thousands of artists would be, you know, in this market doing things every day. That becomes kind of complicated, no, to choose.
Very difficult.
And very competitive.
And very competitive. And then, you know, the funny thing about this world is on the one hand, it's very nascent. It's just getting started. It's just exploding now. On the other hand, there's already some rules that are becoming really clear. So for example, if you have an artist like Beeple or Pac who started really in this world and are not known to the traditional world, or were not known, they're the ones that are maintaining their value the best, and their artwork is really appreciating. But when you have famous people that are trying to get in on a trend and trying to cash in, and you have an actor or an actress or a DJ or something just trying to drop something in NFT, it doesn't work well. Like the community doesn't really embrace that, and what you're seeing is that those values actually usually go down after the initial drop. And so that rule is already pretty cemented. You know, you have to actually be an artist. You actually have to have a good product, and you have to be embraced by the community. And that's something that I think is very interesting. And if you understand that world well, and you understand who those artists are and what process is the right one, that is how you can make money in that particular avenue of investing, which is in buying individual pieces of artwork.
How do you see, you know, both, you know, the traditional art world and this digital art working together? Do you think that will some way get together or have an impact one or the other?
Certainly, I think they will have to work together. I think that over time, NFTs won't be a niche within the art world, but will become the art world. I think it's just a more efficient way of, again, with transacting, of proving ownership, of proving provenance, of just working around art in general. So I think that it will be embraced conceptually by the art world. I don't know, however, how, and we can also already see the interest from all the major auction houses, from all the major galleries, from all the major creators, tier one creators of the traditional world, that they're obviously looking in to do something. So there will be some sort of merger. What I think, again, to adding on David's point, on top of that, is that I think that the creators that will do very well will be those that actually use the technology in a way that is more profound than just a digital representation of the
So
physical.
you say, more an artist that already works with digital, more than any standard or traditional
yes,
artist.
Yes, or an artist that has tradition that is traditional, but that is able to really add and innovate while he's producing in this digital reality.
Well, I think, I don't know, but even in the real world of art, not in the digital art form, there's a lot of marketing that has to be done for anyone to really make it. It's like commercial too. Art is also commercial. And you see that, there are wonderful, artists that are never known in the world. But there are some that quickly go from one place to the other. And it has to do a lot of the commercial part of it, how they are marketed and how they get there. And I don't know if this is more democratic, let's say, in the digital world, or do you think that will happen the same way?
I mean, influence is influence, no? And influence always is able to accomplish certain things. What I would say, though, is that that's going to be driven maybe not so much by capital, but by the community voting with their feet, as we say, of which creators they think they will support. So I personally think that those that engage with the community will be rewarded, because the way to become big in this ecosystem is to be around social media, to be engaging, etc., etc. I think it's very important.
And do you think, for example, if somebody very important in the art market buys something, would everybody know?
You mean
like me through, because of course you can always go back and check who owns the piece and who has it and all of this.
Well, it's a little, so people will see that a transaction happened, but you can also remain anonymous if you want to. So you can track the transaction happening to a certain wallet address, but nobody needs to know necessarily who is behind it. Now, usually they do. But I do want to go back to one thing you mentioned, because the merging of the traditional and the digital world is a very interesting point. And in some ways, we Pablo and I encompass that a little bit in our careers. There are certain emotions that the traditional world gives when you see an artwork that the digital world cannot replicate, right? So when we walked into your living room, you were so gracious to host us a couple of weeks back, and some of the artwork that you have there, the emotions that gives you is something that just cannot be replicated in the digital world. It just cannot, because you're seeing it physically in front of you, and
you have this
it speaks to you.
This sensation.
It speaks to you. And that is something that the digital world is not trying to compete against, and nor can it, right? At the same time, there are parts of that world that, can have improvements, right? So for example, the veracity of each piece, the understanding really who bought it when, at what point, how did it evolve over time, transparency to the process of the galleries versus non, like all of those things are things that potentially create a little bit of opacity to that world, no? The digital world gives you certain emotions that the traditional world cannot, right? So for example, you can share your view or your gallery or your Nifty page or your Makerspace, whatever you want, with your friends anywhere in the world they are at any time, talk about them, and not just have them visit you to where you are. And at the same time, you can take it with you wherever you go, right? So both have certain aspects that are very positive. And that not necessarily compete with each other, right? And then it becomes to the individual collector to figure out what speaks more to them, right? And I think that there are parts of the traditional world that will go very well with the digital world. For example, there are very important artists that are having physical pieces alongside the digital piece, right? So for example, Beeple and a few others. And that connects with people. And that makes the piece feel worth more, because you can actually see it, and that's something that connects with you.
Also, I think that's at the transition, no?
And
some people need to have something to touch to really understand that they have something, no?
And then, yes, and then in the traditional world, it's also true that it would also probably benefit from having a bit of a token, of a public ledger that will give you all the information saying, this was really done by this artist, it was done this year, it was sold 3 years later to whoever, it was then sold, like to just be able to follow the history and assure you that A, it's yours, that B, it's real, and C, that you can follow the history of that. And I feel like there are various pieces that can merge with each other, but there are some parts of them that are always going to speak to different people.
It's true. For example, if I own a piece of digital art, can I go and print it and have it in my living room?
Depending on the file, on how it is, yes, you could do that, yes.
Well, you can project it.
Or you can print it as well?
Well, you can print it as well, but you can print any of these as well, right? I mean, you can just take a picture and print it. Obviously, it's not worth anything close to it, and it doesn't
it's
speak to you.
like a copy.
See,
it's
it
like
doesn't
you're making
speak
a
to you.
copy of
No.
something that already exists.
The analogy that I like to use with this is similar. You can go to see the Mona Lisa, and you can take out the best picture that you can.
I know.
You can use.
Or you can own it.
You cannot own it. Yeah.
Well, you're getting to the crux of the issue.
That's it.
You can
This
get
is
the
the
best
issue.
painter to actually make it exactly. And
But
you
it's
can
a copy.
But it's a copy.
This
It's not
is
yours.
exactly the issue. So the NFT is what proves publicly, in an irrefutable way, that it is yours, and it also tells you where it came from and who has owned it before you. But only you can transact in it.
That's wonderful. That's a very good process that I think is going to really enhance the way you also buy, traditional art, because it gives you so many assurances of what you're buying. No, if you have your
You also made
Your
another point about
documentation.
traditional artists potentially going into this world, and Pablo and I have been discussing this over some time. And what's interesting is that if you get one of the top 5 artists in the traditional world today, and they literally just create a copy of something that they already own and mint it as an NFT and drop it somewhere, it's obviously going to go for a lot of money, but it's not necessarily going to probably sell as well as you think. What really has value, to Pablo's point, is if that artist says, okay, here's our interpretation of what the new digital ecosystem means, creates a new and different piece that exemplifies his style in the digital world, right? Not just, oh, let's copy whatever, the skull that Damien Hirst has and just drop it. Like, something new, different, with his interpretation of what that means, would be worth a lot more, correct?
Well, I was looking at the art that, for example, the Beeple does,
Yes.
And of course, it's kind of
Well, some of it is actually very nice,
crazy,
some of it is not.
it's maybe attract a lot of young generation of people, But
I understand that aesthetically is different to what the traditional world is doing, but at the same time, there are some messages and there are some components that I think are similar to what we see in the traditional world. The attention to detail and again the profoundness of their work is a little bit more than just the aesthetics that you can see. Yeah.
But look, the 2 top artists, Beeple and Pac, at this point, we'll see where the world evolves. We both believe that Beeple and Pac will obviously be key parts of the growth in this world, and likely the top 2. But they're extremely different. If you look at Beeple's work, it's what you said, right? Aesthetically, it creates an emotion in you. And some pieces are actually very nice to look at, like Bull Runner into the Ether, and others are more difficult maybe to look at. But that's part of the art, right? It's what he sees in that day. However, Pac's work is completely different, right? It's clean lines. No, Pablo, you can explain. I'm sure better.
Perceptual.
It's much more, it's more modern. Very clean, minimalist. So, and they both have very good value, and it just speaks to different collectors.
Are all these pieces like 3-dimensional or not? 3-dimensional?
No. So the great thing about the NFTs is that they really allow you to attach any file that you want. They could be a JPEG, but they could be a GIF, they could be a video, they could be a 3D object. They could be really anything that you wish. Yeah.
What makes an NFT is the proof of ownership and irrefutability of that particular piece.
Yes.
That's all it does. So Beeple, he did artwork before NFTs existed, and he actually started minting NFTs 6 months ago. They're 2 separate issues, no? But to your point about the Mona Lisa, you can take a picture, but it's not yours, it's not the same. And so that NFT is what creates additional value to the piece of artwork.
For example, did you work with people, before the auctions and all of that, with the art, with the work that you?
Yes, so I did work with him, but I just helped him and guided him with conceptually how they drop, which platform should it be, how to present the work, and a little bit of guidance on what the industry is generally accepting. I did speak many times with him before his first drop, where I realized again that he had all the virtues that I thought would make him a big leader in the space. And that process was, again, what I feel actually very honored or very proud of is not the sale or a multiple. And obviously everybody likes those type of things, but it has been that having been alongside him while he was making certain decisions along the way. But yes.
Well, we're going to really see something new, and we're going to have to adapt to something new, because this is the future. This would be the future. And for me, to tell you the truth, it's been very interesting. And I've been involved after I met you and I've heard about all of this, I've been really, going into it, because I think that's the future. Eventually, that's the next generation of people. That's where we're going. So I'll let you know how it went. I'm investigating.
Very good.
Well, thank you both for being with us, for having to tell us all of these little things that we didn't know 5 minutes ago. And best of luck to both of you. I'm sure you're gonna both have a lot of luck, because you're doing something great. Thank you for being this afternoon with us. We think that if you really like the program, please subscribe to our channel and do click also on notifications. See you soon.